Hi, everyone. Welcome back to English Unlocked, your friendly guide to learning and mastering English. I'm Emma.
And I'm Jake. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and important topic, English for politics. Whether you're watching the news or discussing global events, understanding political language helps you stay informed and share your opinions clearly.
That's right, Jake. In this episode, we'll cover essential political terms, how to discuss current events, and ways to express your views politely and clearly.
We'll also practice some useful phrases and break down common political topics to help you sound confident in conversations. Let's get started.
Understanding political conversations starts with knowing key political terms. These are the words and phrases you often hear in the news, and they help us make sense of what's happening in the world. Let's go over some important terms and explain what they mean in simple language.
Good idea. Let's begin with the word government. This means the group of people who make decisions and laws for a country. Every country has a government, and their job is to manage important areas of life, like education, healthcare, and security. Without a government, it would be difficult to organize society or provide essential services. Governments can be small, like in a local town, or large, like a national government that oversees an entire country.
And did you know that governments are usually divided into different branches? Each branch has a special role. For example, in many countries, there are three main branches of government. 1. Executive branch. This branch enforces the laws. It includes leaders like the president, prime minister, or other officials who make sure laws are followed. For example, the President of the United States is part of the executive branch and is responsible for signing bills into law and leading the military. 2. Legislative branch. This branch makes the laws. It usually consists of a parliament or Congress where elected representatives discuss and vote on new laws. For instance, the United Kingdom has a parliament with two parts, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. These groups work together to create laws that affect the entire country. 3. Judicial branch. This branch interprets the laws. It includes courts and judges who decide if laws are fair and if people are following them correctly. For example, the Supreme Court in the United States is part of the judicial branch. It has the power to review laws and decide if they agree with the Constitution.
That's right. Another key term is democracy. This is a system of government where people have the power to choose their leaders through voting. In a democracy, citizens can express their opinions, and their votes help shape how the country is run. Countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and India are examples of democracies where people participate in elections regularly. Democracies can be direct, where citizens vote on decisions themselves, or representative, where they elect officials to make decisions on their behalf.
Exactly. And when we talk about democracy, we often hear the words election and vote. An election is the process where people choose their leaders. It can happen at different levels, local, regional, or national. For example, local elections choose mayors and city council members, while national elections select presidents or prime ministers. A vote is how people make their choice during an election. People usually vote by marking a paper ballot, using a voting machine, or even voting online in some places. Each vote contributes to deciding who will lead and what policies will be followed.
Another important term is political parties. These are groups of people who share similar ideas about how a country should be governed. Different parties often have different views on issues like healthcare, education, and the economy. For example, in the United States, there are two major political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. Each party offers different solutions and policies for the country. In other countries, there may be many political parties representing a wider range of views. Political parties play a crucial role in shaping laws and public policies.
Speaking of policies, let's talk about that word. A policy is a plan of action that a government or political party supports. It's like a roadmap for how to handle important issues. For example, a government might have a policy to reduce pollution by investing in clean energy. Policies can affect everyday life, such as how much you pay in taxes or what kinds of healthcare services you receive. Policies are often created in response to public needs and can change over time as society evolves.
And when people have different opinions about policies, they often have a debate. In politics, a debate is a formal discussion where people share and argue their ideas. You may see debates between political candidates before an election. These debates help people understand the candidate's views and decide who to vote for. For example, during a presidential election, candidates participate in televised debates where they answer questions about their plans and policies.
Another essential word is constitution. This is the main set of laws and principles that guide how a country is governed. Many countries have a written constitution that explains how the government works and what rights people have. For example, the United States Constitution outlines the powers of the government and the rights of citizens, like freedom of speech and the right to vote. Some countries, like the United Kingdom, have an unwritten constitution, which means their rules come from a combination of written laws, court decisions, and customs.
That's a really important term. Another one to know is candidate. A candidate is someone who wants to be elected to a government position. During an election, candidates share their ideas and plans to convince people to vote for them. You might see candidates speaking at public events, on television, or online to explain their views. For example, in a mayoral election, candidates will discuss local issues such as public transportation or housing.
Now, let's practice using these words in sentences. This will help us remember and understand them better. For example, I could say, the government is planning new policies to improve healthcare. In this sentence, government refers to the group making decisions, and policies are their plans to improve healthcare.
That's a great example. Here's another one. During the election, many candidates talked about education and jobs. This shows how candidates share their ideas during the election process to attract voters.
Excellent. It's helpful to use these words in your everyday conversations. If you hear a political term on the news, try to understand its meaning and use it in a sentence. For instance, you might say, the legislative branch is voting on a new education law, or there was a heated debate about healthcare policies.
Exactly. And if you're unsure about a word, don't be afraid to look it up. Practicing these terms will make you feel more confident when talking about politics. The more you use them, the easier it will become.
That's right. Politics can seem complicated, but understanding these basic terms gives you a strong foundation. Keep practicing and stay curious. Now that we know some key political terms, let's talk about how to discuss current events. When you watch the news or read about politics, it's important to express your opinions clearly and understand what others are saying. Being able to discuss current events allows you to engage in meaningful conversations and stay informed about the world around you.
Right. A good way to start is by asking questions. This shows that you are interested and want to understand other perspectives. For example, you could ask, "What do you think about the recent election?" Or, "How do you feel about the new policy on education?" Open-ended questions like these encourage people to share their thoughts.
Exactly. Open-ended questions are questions that cannot be answered with just yes or no. They require a more detailed response. This helps keep the conversation going and allows you to learn more. For example, instead of asking, "Do you like the new policy?" you could ask, "What are your thoughts on the new policy?" This invites a deeper discussion.
When you want to share your own thoughts, you can use phrases like, "in my opinion," or "I believe that." These phrases help you introduce your viewpoint clearly. For example, "In my opinion, it's important for everyone to vote." This lets others know that you are expressing a personal belief without being too forceful.
Another useful phrase is, "from my perspective." This means how you see or understand a situation. For instance, you could say, "From my perspective, the new law will help small businesses." This phrase is polite and shows that you are sharing your viewpoint without dismissing others' opinions.
Exactly. And if you want to agree with someone, you can say, "I agree with you." For example, I agree with you that education should be free. This clearly shows that you support their idea. You can also use phrases like, I completely agree, or that's a good point. These phrases show strong agreement and encourage positive conversation.
And if you disagree, it's important to do so politely. Being respectful makes conversations more productive. Instead of simply saying, I disagree, you can say, I understand your point, but, for example, I understand your point, but I think there are other ways to improve education. This shows that you are listening while expressing a different opinion.
That's a great point. Being polite in political discussions is very important. Here are some useful phrases to express disagreement in a respectful way. I see your point, but I think. I understand, but from my view. I respect your opinion, but I believe. These phrases help you express a different opinion without sounding rude or argumentative.
Let's practice a simple conversation. Imagine someone says, I think voting is very important. How would you respond?
If I agree, I could say, I agree. Voting allows people to have a voice in government decisions. This response supports their view and adds an explanation.
That's a good response. And if you have a different opinion, you might say, I understand your point, but I think many people feel their votes don't make a difference. This acknowledges their opinion while sharing a different perspective.
Another useful skill when discussing current events is describing what is happening. This helps you share information and keep others informed. You can use phrases like, according to the news, recent reports show that, it was reported that, for example, according to the news, the new policy will start next year. This shows that your information comes from a reliable source.
Yes, and if you want to add your opinion about the information, you could say, in my view, this change will have a positive effect. This allows you to combine facts with your thoughts.
Let's try another example. If someone says, the new policy will help students, how could you respond?
If I agree, I could say, I completely agree. It will make education more affordable for everyone. And if I disagree, I might say, I see your point, but some people worry about how to pay for these changes. Both responses keep the conversation respectful and thoughtful.
Great examples. It's also important to ask follow-up questions to keep the conversation going. You could ask, why do you think that? Or, can you explain more? This shows curiosity and helps you understand different views.
Exactly. And when you share your ideas, remember to stay calm and respectful. Political discussions can be sensitive, but using polite language and listening carefully makes a big difference.
Let's go over some more advanced ways to express opinions and ask about current events. For example, if you want to know more details, you can ask, could you elaborate on that? What are the main reasons behind this policy? How do you think this will affect the community? These questions encourage deeper conversation and show that you are genuinely interested in learning more.
That's a great point. And when you are sharing your opinion in a more formal discussion, you can use phrases like, it seems to me that, based on what I've read, I believe, from my understanding, this could lead to. These phrases add a thoughtful and respectful tone to your statements. For example, based on what I've read, I believe the new policy could improve healthcare access.
Another important skill is summarizing what others say to show that you understand. You can use phrases like, so what you're saying is, if I understand correctly, you mean. In other words, you believe that. For example, so what you're saying is the new policy will benefit small businesses the most.
That's right. Summarizing helps clarify ideas and prevents misunderstandings. It also shows that you are paying attention and value the other person's opinion.
So, to summarize, when discussing current events, 1. Ask open-ended questions to start a conversation. 2. Share your thoughts using phrases like, in my opinion, or from my perspective. 3. Agree politely with phrases like, I agree with you. 4. Disagree respectfully by saying, I understand your point, but. 5. Describe current events using phrases like, according to the news. 6. Use advanced phrases to deepen the conversation like, could you elaborate? And based on what I've read. 7. Summarize others' opinions to show understanding with phrases like, so what you're saying is...
With these phrases, you'll be able to discuss current events confidently and politely. Keep practicing, and you'll improve your conversational skills over time.
Remember, discussing current events helps you stay informed, understand different opinions, and develop strong communication skills. The more you practice, the better you'll become.
Now let's focus on how to express your political opinions clearly and respectfully.
Yes, when you share your views, it's important to be clear and polite. This helps people understand your ideas without causing arguments. Start with phrases like, in my opinion, I believe that, from my point of view.
Exactly. These phrases make it clear that you are sharing your personal thoughts. For example, you could say, in my opinion, voting is an important responsibility. This shows you are expressing what you think without forcing others to agree.
Right. And if you want to support your opinion, you can use evidence. This makes your argument stronger and more convincing. You could say, based on recent reports, research shows that, according to experts.
That's a smart approach. For instance, you might say, based on recent reports, the new education policy will improve schools. Or, research shows that renewable energy reduces pollution. When you use evidence, people are more likely to take your opinion seriously.
If you want to suggest an idea or a solution, you could use phrases like, I suggest that. It might be a good idea to, one possible solution is...
Yes. For example, you could say, I suggest that we invest more in healthcare. This phrase clearly presents your idea without sounding too aggressive. You might also say, it might be a good idea to increase funding for public schools. These phrases sound thoughtful and encourage discussion.
And what if you're not completely sure about something? It's okay to express uncertainty. You can use phrases like, I'm not certain, but it seems that, as far as I know.
Exactly. If you aren't 100% sure, you can say, I'm not certain, but it seems that more people are supporting renewable energy. This shows you are open to other ideas while sharing your thoughts. Another example is, as far as I know, the new law aims to reduce taxes. This keeps the conversation open and respectful.
Another useful skill is agreeing or disagreeing respectfully. If you agree with someone, you could say, I agree with you because... That's a good point. I also think, I see your point, and I would add that...
Right. For example, you might say, I agree with you because public transportation is better for the environment. Or, that's a good point. I also think we need to make public transport more affordable. These phrases show that you are listening and building on others' ideas.
And if you disagree, it's important to do it politely. You can say, I understand your point, but I see it differently because I respect your opinion, but I believe that. That's an interesting view. However, from my perspective...
Exactly. For instance, you could say, I understand your point, but I see it differently because public transport needs better funding. This shows you value their opinion while explaining yours. Or, I respect your opinion, but I believe that more public awareness is needed. Being polite keeps the conversation positive.
Let's practice these phrases with a real-life example. Emma, what's your opinion on public transportation?
In my opinion, improving public transportation helps the environment and makes travel easier for everyone.
Great point. And from my perspective, better public transportation also reduces traffic. This means fewer cars on the road and less pollution.
That's true. Based on recent studies, cities with strong public transportation systems have lower carbon emissions. I suggest that more cities invest in electric buses and trains to improve public transport.
Good idea. And it might be a good idea to offer discounts to encourage more people to use public transportation. This could make it more affordable and attractive.
Yes. And if people are unsure, we could share facts like, research shows that better public transport improves air quality. This makes the benefits clear.
You could also ask questions to encourage discussion. For example, What do you think about this issue? How do you see it from your perspective? Can you share your opinion on this?
That's a great idea. Asking questions shows you are open to hearing different views. You could say, "What do you think about investing in public transport?" This invites others to share their ideas and promotes a balanced conversation.
Exactly. So, to express political opinions clearly, remember to use helpful phrases, support your views with evidence, suggest thoughtful ideas, be open to other perspectives, and encourage dialogue. It makes conversations easier and more productive.
Engaging in political discussions can be challenging, but using the right language helps. Let's go over some phrases to join a discussion politely.
You can start by saying, "I'd like to add," or "May I share my view?" For example, "I'd like to add that public education needs more funding." These phrases show that you want to contribute without interrupting others. They signal that you respect the flow of conversation while expressing your thoughts.
Exactly. Being polite helps keep the conversation respectful. If you agree with someone, you might say, "I completely agree," or "That's a good point." For instance, "I completely agree that healthcare should be affordable for everyone." Using these phrases shows that you acknowledge and support the other person's opinion, which can help build a positive atmosphere in the discussion.
And when you disagree, it's important to express your views respectfully. You could say, "I see it differently," or "I have a slightly different view." For example, "I see it differently. I believe the government should focus more on job creation." By framing your disagreement politely, you avoid sounding confrontational and encourage a productive exchange of ideas.
Yes. Another way to disagree politely is by using phrases like, "I understand your point, but," or "That's interesting, but I think." This shows that you are listening, even if you have another opinion. For instance, you could say, "I understand your point, but I believe we should prioritize climate change policies." This approach helps maintain a balanced and respectful tone.
That's a great point, Emma. It's also helpful to ask questions to understand the other person's views better. You can ask, "What do you think about?" or "Can you explain why you feel that way?" For example, "What do you think about lowering taxes?" Asking questions shows that you are open to hearing different perspectives and are willing to engage in a meaningful conversation.
Right. Questions encourage open discussion. And when you want to clarify your own views, you can say, "To be clear, I believe," or "What I mean is." For instance, "To be clear, I believe that renewable energy is the future." Clarifying your position helps avoid misunderstandings and ensures that your message is communicated clearly.
Good tip. And if you want to end a discussion respectfully, you could say, "I appreciate your perspective," or "It was interesting to hear your views." This leaves the conversation on a positive note and shows that you value the other person's opinions, even if you disagree.
That's true. Political discussions can be tough, but using respectful language makes them easier. Let's review some key phrases. "I'd like to add." To join the conversation, "I completely agree," to show agreement, and "I see it differently," to express a different opinion. Being mindful of how you express yourself helps to foster a respectful and thoughtful dialogue.
Also, don't forget to ask questions like, "What do you think about?" and use phrases like, "I appreciate your perspective," to end on a good note. Being polite and clear helps everyone share their views comfortably. Additionally, active listening and acknowledging others' viewpoints contribute to a more engaging and open discussion.
Well said, Jake. With these phrases, you can engage in political discussions confidently and respectfully. Remember, the goal is not to win an argument, but to share ideas and understand different perspectives. That brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope you found these political terms and phrases helpful and feel more confident discussing politics in English.
Remember, the more you practice using these words in conversations, the easier they become. Keep watching the news, asking questions, and expanding your vocabulary.
Thanks for joining us on English Unlocked. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more lessons like this. Until next time, keep learning and keep practicing. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.